Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Everything HR podcast. I'm your host, Manuel, founder and CEO of Omni HR. And today, Beck and I are going to be discussing getting distracted. Like that's kind of what we talked about. So I'm curious a little bit about your input just on that. It's a very blanketed idea.
Now, when you say getting distracted, specifically in the workplace, and how it can affect you as an employee, how it can affect your employer, how does it tie into the HR realm, and not just distraction. I think we did mention a few other cognitive issues that occur for everybody because we're all human. But my my opinion on it varies because it depends on what the distraction is. Is it relative? Is it something personal? Again, so while in the workplace, is it something that is unforeseen? Is
Yeah.
so we could dive in and see what path we take. I'm pretty sure we're gonna branch out like we always do into different areas, but I'm excited to talk about this because I know it is big with everyone,
Yeah.
especially with burnout after during and after the COVID incident. And, we still have COVID around, but the main wave has passed.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to discuss this.
I gotcha. Yeah, for sure. So for me, whenever I think of human resources and I think of distractions in the workplace, my mind automatically goes to work from home.
Okay.
When it goes to work from home, the main reason why it goes to that is because that's one of the biggest topics right now is how do we engage our team when they're at home, when they have probably the most distractions. You can get distracted with your dog, the TV, your bed. You can get distracted by the outside. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot
Yeah.
more to get distracted outside. Um, and so that's kind of my mindset on that.
Okay.
Like it's so easy to be distracted at home. I think that if we can kind of cover that side of things and like hammer some ideas for people to one, the ones getting distracted being able to manage their time better, and then two, setting up some goals and some like actual tactical techniques that HR or just managers, leaders can use while watching their team. Because it's really hard. I could go to an office and I can watch everyone make sure they're doing what they need to do. I could just look up behind their screen and see if they're playing Minecraft or whatever. But on the other hand, you can't do that at home. There are some software that can do those things,
Mm-hmm.
but then it becomes a battle. It becomes like, well, how much is too much, or what
Yeah.
is kind of the turning point where
You're babysitting at that point.
yes, correct, babysitting, or the negative connotations on overwatching, micromanaging, freedom of I don't know, like your own personal time, things like that. Like all that kind of goes away a little bit when it comes to the work from home.
Mm-hmm. But that also kind of ties back into reading the handbook in our last discussion because in a lot of the work from home, you are signing off a lot of privacy rights. But we that's a different topic. So staying on track with the distractions. So when you're discussing the work from home related distractions, everything you mentioned is 100%. We have both been and still are in the work from home realm. We're just a little bit more free with our work now, but where we used to have jobs that did keep track of what we were doing on our computers. And I don't know about your job that you had originally for the remote job, but um, my first remote job, they kept track of us through the camera as well. So we always had to have our cameras open, not necessarily on. And I say open because they came with covers, but it was just for management to just suddenly pop in on us to see are we in an empty room or uh, a room with nobody else, a
Hmm.
closed room, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to, making sure we're not watching TV or doing something else. Um, so to an extent, I understand. I understand, and the reason why I say to an extent is because whether it be management or I don't know how far this goes and who's monitoring the employees that are working from home, but there are those who abuse their power their privileges to pop in and check on the employees. And there are those that essentially just stalk their employees. And it's not a matter of what is the idea of it, exaggeration.
Hmm.
It's not a matter of exaggeration. This is genuinely what has happened to some employees that have spoken out on social media saying that they were being stalked, that they noticed that their cameras were constantly monitoring them,
Yeah.
and they would get texts you saying stop playing with your thumbs, or you need to not be doing your hair while you're on your shift and stuff like that. Now, some have been called out for such as having people in the room when they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
A lot of these work from home jobs, they tend to be mixing with healthcare. So you have to worry about HIPAA. That's what the part where I do understand you're not supposed to have anybody in the room with you while you're taking these calls because you are discussing a lot of patient confidentiality.
Yeah.
Um, but there are those that are stockish. Yeah, I agree with them. They're creepy. So, like I said, I'm not one side or the other. I can understand to an extent having to monitor these people and softwares too. My job definitely they noted it. They let us know this is the software that keeps track of everything you do on your computer.
Mm.
Now mine was a work computer, my first one, so I didn't have to use my personal device. I think you had to use your personal
Yep.
device. So, in my opinion, if a job is a remote job that is going to be requiring software to keep track of your computer, they should be providing you a business computer.
I agree.
I
I
do
agree.
not agree with companies that require to use your own device because that's putting your personal information at risk. And I mean, that's the whole battle with TikTok right now. Personal information is out there if you have TikTok on a device. But again, that's another discussion. So distractions can be anywhere. And how we monitor them is it's like a grain of salt, or I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. But how you monitor them is very important not to interrupt and abuse someone's privacy.
I agree. Yeah, when it comes to distractions, I mean, we've talked about this before, but at home or in person, there's not really like too much of a difference in which you can get distracted. At home, it's just there's more to distract you.
Yeah,
But as you stated, I mean, there's always that line, and then once you cross that line, it becomes
an issue.
yeah, a problem. And in this situation where the stalking and things like that, some of the stuff that you said, I could for sure see that as like if I was hopping in to one specific person all the time, yes, that would be a problem. But if I hopped into every single person the same amount of time and then I kept calling one person out, then that's not necessarily the same problem. That's I'm doing the same thing on our side.
Mm-hmm.
One person keeps getting caught doing the wrong thing, that's them. So
That's a distinct difference.
exactly. So I definitely can see where you're coming from, and it's very easy to abuse your power in that side of things. Um, so yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic. I mean, anytime you talk about work from home, I feel like it's always pretty interesting. But focusing more on the distractions part, not just at home, I've had the problem too. Back I used to work at a UPS and I was in the warehouse. And there were some times where I would be on one of the gradings and I would have my phone out and my team is all working, all of our numbers are doing good. So I'll just be like, you know what? Let me see what at the time it was. I think Facebook was big or whatever. But
you
yeah,
you
I would
text
just
me or video call
yep,
me
I would text or
sometimes.
video call you. I was be bored just hanging
Yeah,
out because the team was all taken care of. Everyone was solid. Everyone was doing what they needed to do.
yeah.
But there's always more to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the issue where the distraction really comes from is that there's always something that can be done. Like you
If
can
you can
always
lean, you can
improve.
clean. If you can talk, you can stalk.
Yep,
Those terms come true, actually, and it's not just in the food business, it's everywhere.
it really is. It's absolutely everywhere. There's always something to do. Right now, I have the issue of I have so many things that I can be doing right now that I get distracted from the sheer volume. Like I have 17 different tasks that I still need to do. I have like 7 big projects. I have this that I'm overseeing or that I'm overdoing. So sometimes you can literally get distracted by the things you have to do because of the other things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Like you don't finish one task because you're split between 17 other things. So it's pretty interesting though. The only problem is that for that you don't get an excuse. You know what I mean? Like you're like you got things need to be done. The way you feel doesn't matter.
Oh boy, we're not diving into that again.
But we
No, we're
can.
going to avoid the whole feelings topic. Um, so yeah, with the distractions, I totally see how that's an issue, and the multitasking because you essentially covered multitasking.
Mhm,
So knowing how much you can and cannot do is very important,
mhm,
but knowing when to actually take that in consideration is even more important. Like, I'll use you as an example. You have a million different things going on right now, and the other day I know you mentioned bringing something new to the table for Omni, and I told you it's not your niche, it's not your specification. You need to stick to what you know.
mhm,
You already got so much going on. If you start branching out to something you're not aware of, you've got to do all this research. There might be legality issues. It becomes a problem.
mhm,
So you can you can have a lot going on in the greater scheme of things, but if there's too much, it is a distraction still,
yeah,
regardless if it's positive or not. So it's very important for us to make sure that when we're trying to get from step A to step Z, that we're following it in order with little deviations, and also making sure that we're not trying to skip steps, but we're also not trying to do multiple steps at a time.
mm,
So, and I know a lot of people are like, well, then you don't get anything done that way. Yes, you do. If you got an attitude that way, then obviously you're not going to get anything done that way because you're already in the mindset of it's not going to happen. So you got to have a good mind. You got to keep yourself organized
mhm.
because if you're organized, you have less distractions. And really wish we could bring a colleague of mine on because this is his topic. Keeping himself organized and less distracted is a daily task for him. So I
Yeah.
really wish he could be on. But the distractions in work from home, in person jobs, it it never stops. And I
Mm,
know employers are trying to do away with as many distractions as they can, but they're creating an environment that feels like a prison. And speaking from someone who used to teach in a classroom where you remember I try to decorate and I put all
mhm.
this stuff up and I was told to take it down according to air quote fire hazards.
Yeah.
Come to find out that a majority of the staff and teachers had eccentric decorations, but they were allowed to keep them up. My classroom was focused on remediation students, those who were struggling to get by in high school, and they were doing great.
Mhm,
They were doing even better when I decorated. They were more comfortable coming to my class to rewrite the wrongs that they did. Well, when we had to take it down, it was terrible. The report dropped. Um, they the students made it very clear they weren't distractions. It was more comfortable. They got a lot more done. I had the digital evidence to prove it. So the reason why I bring up the core is because a lot of employers use it as an excuse for like it's a distraction, it shouldn't be there, whereas some people use it, like I said with the students, they use it for comfort.
mhm.
So what is your take on decor being a distraction or not?
I think great question by the way. So if considering the difference between decor and distractions, or if they're the same thing, yeah, great question. I would have to say it's a case by case basis. I think that an organization has to be professional, but that's mainly in like when it comes to like your face value with any clients or things like that. When it comes to clients, you need to have a professional front, uh, even if it's a little bit more relaxed or a little bit more calm or chill in the background. Having that sense of professionalism will be able to help people hold, like, they can trust you. If I have someone who has a bunch of like random stuff all around, or decorations that have cursing, profanity, any vulgarities, things like that, that could become a problem. But you know, if you're working in a place you don't have to see other customers, then there ideally shouldn't be too big of a problem. But then it becomes an issue of, well, what if someone on your team doesn't like it?
Mm.
And then it's not just a you problem, it's, well, now your team doesn't like it, or your team finds it distracting. Okay, well, there's that case. Or, well, what if you're a student and 70% of your students like it, but the remaining 30% don't? So where's the line is kind of like a play. And that's kind of more of an ethical side of things, which is a part of HR. HR has to walk that line, and HR has to always be thinking about
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is too much of something, or what is not enough of something, or how can we give people an individualistic personality while also keeping a corporate firm structure. Like, balancing that out is really important, and that actually comes down to the brand of the company. So the type, the company, the way that they hold themselves, their culture, what is allowed and what not allowed, all that comes down to their brand. Um, so for your situation, or at least your conversation about decor and decorations, um, they can be distractions. I think that the distraction will depend uh, on what the company is, where it's at, who sees it, and then at no point should there be like vulgarity and things like that. So that's kind of like my stance on those.
I got you. Yeah, I agree. It depends on it. It's a case by case scenario, and um, I don't know if it's bias opinion. My decorations weren't a distraction because it was just wallpaper, nature wallpaper at that, and garden lights around the room. Um, even the educational posters were. They told me to take them down, and
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember seeing them, but um, couple of them were maps of around the world because all subjects were taught in that classroom.
yeah,
So it was maps around the world, formulas for math, book covers as blown up as posters, popular book covers throughout literature history, and I think some we had a what is that called? The chemistry poster, the most iconic one, the periodic
the
table.
periodic table. Okay.
Yes. So I literally had something from every subject, and I was told to take them down because they were a distraction, which is insane to me because all subjects were included in my class.
Hmm.
Um, and if it's a distraction, then what do you have going on in the school system? I go to other classrooms and I see I see teachers with stuffed animals in their classroom. Mind you, this was a high school.
Yeah.
For anyone who's like, oh, this might be an elementary. No, this is a high school. And the stuffed animals weren't in the neurodivergence classrooms. They were in your atypical students class. It was actually in an English teacher's classroom.
Mm.
And there was a lot. There was yoga balls. There were regular balls, a Nerf gun, a lot of Nerf guns in the science division. I don't know why. Um, but there was a lot going on, and we did not do playful activities to distract because I knew that the students were there for their main and only goal,
Hmm.
and that was to redo the classes that they had failed. Or I did have a handful of college students that were actually doing classes ahead of their time, but they were typically all in the same class as each other, so they didn't share the classroom with those who had to repeat classes. Um, and at no point did I ever have to correct the student to stop paying it, to like stop focusing on the wallpaper or the garden lights or even the posters. I
Yeah.
had a student take a picture of the periodic table because he just was terrible in science. And he was like, this is super helpful. Like, I have it in my classrooms, but I don't have it at home.
Hmm.
And he felt kind of awkward to take pictures in his other classes because they didn't let him feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But again, never did I have to correct people with being distracted in my class until the decorations came down. And that's when they went back to using their phones or skipping class. And I try to keep my engaging conversations, but again, even that can be a distraction
Hmm.
because we would divert into something that's not related to what they're there for. So it's like you really put me in a bind here because you really want me to keep these kids on track and focused on their overall goal of graduating. But now they're back to feeling back to square one where they're feeling like they're trapped in just a prison. And a lot of them were intelligent. They just didn't want to put the work in,
Yeah,
you know? So the distractions were, they are everywhere, not just the workplace, but education too, which kind of is the foundation for a good work environment.
for sure. Yeah, when it comes to that scenario specifically, the areas that I identify as far as the HR things, the things that like from your story that like pop out at me are one is the main thing I guess I would say is that if there's a policy and procedure that there can't be um, decorations or decor on the walls, then that has to be across the board. So that as far as like
Yep.
just general, HR jumping red flags, it's that. Because then that plays into favoritism. It could be a gender equality. It could be a diversity and inclusion issue. Like, there's a lot of problems that come into that.
Mm-hmm.
Favoritism. Like, there's a ton of different things that it could be.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, I assumed it was ageism because I
ageism as
was
well.
the youngest staff member at the time. Um, and I figured it had to be favoritism because, like, while I may have been a student there long ago and
Hmm.
I'm working there, I was still fresh into the scene with everybody else.
Yeah.
And when I say fresh into the scene, in my hallway alone, I had teachers working there from when I was a student. So it's they've been there for a minute.
Yeah.
But um, looking at the workplace with decorations, I have never felt so comfortable at a workplace until I worked, let me think, at the casino,
Mm.
but specifically with my team. Because,
Yeah.
I did not like anyone else. Like, I could tolerate them, sure, and I could be cordial, professional, but when it came to working with my team, I love them.
Yeah.
And sure, we butted heads, but the we never had an issue with decorations among us.
Yeah.
We were in our own office, like we had cubicles in our own IT office. Our boss, both bosses, because we had a change of management, they were very accepting to whatever we put up because we also knew it can't be vulgar, and I can only ever remember that description. But what you had mentioned earlier, um, and I had posters that were not obscene. I'm a dork, so I have like dinosaurs up there and pictures of our family. I had like 9 different pictures of our family, not just the one. And then we had introduced a new team member. He came up from the dealer floor and he had some stuff up there. And I was like, that might be a little borderline risque. Not entirely sure, but he was good. Cleared it. Boss was fine with it. HR never came into our office. I don't know why. I mean, like you came in just to talk to me, or you had an assignment with me here and there,
Hmm.
but you were the only person from HR that ever came in. Management hardly, and when I say management, I meant like the general manager, hardly ever came in. Um, when they did see our decorations, they didn't mind them.
Yeah.
Like, I had one colleague who had a character from a shooting game, but in the poster, it wasn't anything like pushing
Hmm.
firearms. Um, Another coworker, he loves the Smurfs. Still, no issues. The risque coworker, though, I was a little worried, but even general management didn't have too much of an issue. Now, if we change the scene though, and it wasn't in a secluded IT office, say we moved to accounting where their cubicles were out on the second main floor, I think that would be different, a different case scenario. Or marketing had some interesting individuals that they had their own tastes. I don't think that those type of decorations would be allowed. And the reason why I say this is because those areas received a lot of high traffic.
Hmm.
Whereas IT, we were in our own secluded office. We didn't bother nobody. We only helped to deal with issues. Um, I don't know if also because one of the directors has a picture of a very famous NFL cheerleading group in their office. That's probably why it got overseen. you know, like if you say something, then you actually have to live by your word.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was the case. I doubt it. So what are your thoughts in that case? Like, we have our own IT office, but if it wasn't, do you think those decorations would fly or not?
Yeah. I mean, first off, great point. great case study. So great thing to bring up as well as far as what happened. And then even your identification of like, well, if the scenario was different, then things would be different. You're absolutely right. So there's a few different ways that you look at it from the HR standpoint. The first one would be, well, what's the company policy? Because technically, it shouldn't be a department policy, it should be a company policy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to decorations, things like that, the company and the image, the brand that they want, that is what should be enforced at all levels. So you shouldn't have a situation where, well, because IT is in a closed door, they can do something one way, but because, a cashier is up front, they have to do something different. Like it should be across the board. But
Mm-hmm.
what you said is exactly right. The way that it actually is it's based off of the physical location more than anything else, as well as like the manager, like the direct manager. Because if your boss was very strict, then it wouldn't matter. You wouldn't be able to have it anyways.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes down to what does your manager or your leadership say? And then what's the geographical location? Because your leadership could be super, super chill, but if you're somewhere that has a lot of face, value with clients and technically for you, your internal customers would actually be other members of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be your customers. That's where you have to have your customer service focused. Um, so having that mindset, it really comes down to one, the company policy, two, your specific leadership, and three, your direct location. And I guess four would be who you interact with. Those would be the four things that would basically come down to judging what kind of decoration decor you would be allowed to have. But yeah, great point. Great. I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking of, I have the leniency to do something, but someone down, like you said, the cashier, a slot tech, or
Hmm.
a dealer who's standing at one of the what do they call the tables down
Yeah, the
in
dealer
on the
tables.
casino floor. They don't have that leniency. If they even put a picture of their family on the table, like I'm sure that they would get in trouble.
Yeah,
I have never seen any personal decorations down in those areas.
no, and they also don't have offices.
They don't.
Yeah,
So
so the
even the slot techs
managers.
have to they have to share because they don't have a desk for themselves. They
No,
go in an office that's designated for them, but it's only the manager's office essentially.
correct. No,
So they don't have that space where they can go and put their items at. And then you have the upstairs areas where, like I said, in the IT office, and I believe the security office is like this as well, because it is solely security. No one's
mm,
allowed in there. I've been in there once on a very special case, but that was it. But the space upstairs is, if you're not in a secured space, and the reason why I say this is because certain offices are off limits to people outside of those teams.
mm-hmm,
um your decorations are most likely limited, um not just for distractions reasons, but because of, like you said, the company's branding, the image. So even though the upstairs was off limits to paying clients, it is still high traffic to each other. So like you don't want to have someone from I don't know, financial, or I keep forgetting who's upstairs besides
mm-hmm.
financial and marketing or security.
Yeah,
You don't want someone coming by your cube and they're like, oh my God, look at that electric speaker dog that you have. And that's so awesome. And now you have to deal with them getting distracted by your speaker
yeah.
because you're probably not supposed to have it. Um, and now you might have an issue with management. And they're like, well, you can't have it here anymore because so and so got distracted with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and just for confirmation for, the listeners out there, when you're saying upstairs, you're talking about like basically an office space that is specifically just for kind of back office admin
Yes.
work. We
Yes. Thank you
had
for
and
clarifying.
yeah, no problem. It was basically the outside was lined with a lot of individual offices and the inside was filled with
Upstairs,
cubicles.
yeah.
Yep, and they broke down based off department on where the
No
location.
windows for the little people.
Yeah, that is correct
Yeah.
because the only people that had windows were the
Directors
directors or just the
or their
people in the
assistants.
offices. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But so yeah, no, but that's exactly your it's a great point. And the only time they would go up there would typically to be using the like they had rooms upstairs for presentations and things like that, or meetings, and then possibly on a tour. Other than that, most team members wouldn't go upstairs at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right. It's a secured area. And then when we did bring people up, it was typically like higher
Escort.
up people. They had to have an escort, things like that. Um, but yeah, that's technically still a location where, if a director or, someone who was outside of the organization would come in, they would be looking at that. They would be looking at the offices, they'd be looking at the cubicles, they'd be paying attention. The general manager's office was in that location, so he would be walking around looking and stuff. So I can certainly see where you're coming from as far as saying like that idea and what you can have is completely different,
Yeah.
But that's a great point when it comes to the right and wrong distractions and how decor kind of falls in that. What other distractions do you typically notice when you're at the office?
In person office or
Yeah, we'll say in-person office.
all right, so the in person office. I have seen this in probably every job that I've worked in person. Someone's always got a mess. And I have terrible OCD, and my organization is like, if I can do it, why can't you?
Mm,
But I know a lot of people are not like that. We're not all same build, But I have noticed everywhere I go, someone's got a mess, and it drives me nuts. So in the IT um realm, a lot of people tend to think that having wires everywhere is okay. No, it's not. We actually It's part of IT's budget to make sure you have the right equipment to do wire management. And not looking at the casino, but looking at the law firm that was we worked under. Image is everything with them,
mm,
including the admin side. I've never even seen a client in person. So it was more of image among each other.
mm,
So there, because image was everything with them, the wiring had to be non-existent essentially. And I did a dang good job. I went in after somebody for um our CEO,
mhm.
and I redid his wiring. And when we had a meeting about it, I was like, I don't know who did the wiring before, and if it's one of you guys, no offense, but it sucked because it really did. And that's just one thing I noticed in every place I've been to is the mess. The reason why I emphasize on the mess is not just my OCD, but when you have a messy workplace, you tend to do a messy job.
Mm. That's
And
actually a pretty good point.
yes, I have worked with people with messy um, workplaces, and there's always a significant difference between our actual work that we do. And you know what? Now that you're motioning like that, Manny, I'm gonna use you as an example.
Oh, here it comes.
I'm not gonna use anyone else because I really don't want to offend anyone. And I mean, you never take offense. You take everything with like a grain. But there are times that I've come over to your side of the office, and you've got stuff all over your desk, all over the secondary desk, because this is the secondary desk is the one I'm using. Yeah, I'm talking to you. um, and you'll be working, sure, but then you kind of you kind of don't get things done outside of what you're currently doing. You don't clean up your mess, and the mess just gets bigger. And then you're like, oh, I wonder if this would be a good idea. Oh, and like you're scattered brain. And I know a lot of people are probably like, well, I can work with a mess and still get my job done. That's not the actual point. It's kind of like a tandem effect. If you have a messy desk, it reflects on how you mentally operate, that you are a messy person.
Mm,
And I know we don't do messy, but I just want to emphasize, keep your space clean. It's for some reason, I know there was a science study on that, and I wish we could look it up at the moment, but those who keep their space clean tend to do a more thorough and succeed at their job.
mm.
There was also something released like, if you fix your bed every morning, you're going to be a successful person. I
Yeah.
want to challenge that, but because I do my bed every day and I'm still waiting for those millions. But yeah, it's not, and it's also not just a mess in the workplace. But I'm gonna give some breathing room right now so that way you can touch back on what I just mentioned.
No worries, no worries. So, yeah, I mean, a messy area can definitely be a distraction. Like I 100%, I definitely agree with that, because even if you know where everything is, if you have to work hard to find something, or if someone couldn't pick up where you are and
Yes.
then just take over for you, then there's an issue. That's actually a big problem when you're looking at like the larger scheme of things for companies. Is too many team members will do stuff and it works for them,
Mm-hmm.
but then if someone else needs to help them or jump on a project or just take over for them, or they're on vacation or they're sick or whatever the issue is, they're not there doing it. If someone jumps into that area and tries to pick up where they left off, well, they're usually not following a standard operating procedure. It's usually not written down if they are following one. If they are written down and if they are following it and then they come in and there's a giant mess, they don't know where everything is. If things are organized and they can jump in and get right into it, like that is so rare. Like
Yep.
it's
Yep.
so
Yep. Yep.
rare.
I agree. Yep.
But that's kind of, as far as a big picture, that's where that what seems like a small problem can actually become a very big problem.
Yep.
Because when you have a large organization and you're taking care of hundreds of people, thousands of people, some of these larger companies, um, it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to take care of. And not doing it at a small level and then trying to scale up makes it almost impossible.
Yep.
So on a manager side, yes, like as a leader, like yes, having a tidy area, making sure that someone could come in and basically take over if you need to take a break, or let's say you move up to the next stage. You can't be up for promotion if you have a messy area and they don't think that you can do the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
um
Because if you can't manage yourself, you can't manage somebody else.
Correct. And there's a study, talking about studies, that was done where basically every manager will get promoted until the extent of their like knowledge or their intelligence or their capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you see a supervisor and they've been a supervisor for however long, that's because they're not good enough to get to the
To
next
move up to the
stage.
next thing.
And that's not good enough as like a downplay on them. Maybe they weren't taught, they weren't trained, they haven't taken the initiative to go out to get a next degree, to get more information,
Yep.
or their persona. Are they messy? Are they not? Are they late all the time? Things like that all kind of goes into it.
They might also be in the wrong branch. Because
Wrong, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like, if you want to move up past supervisor, you might have to leave that current branch to something else to where you move up.
Yeah,
Like where
for
one
sure.
ladder ends, there might be another one next to it. So, but that again, if you're organized enough, you will see that, and then you will make the conscious decisions whether or not to move.
Yep, I agree with you there. So I definitely can see how being messy is a problem. I am very messy. So I definitely, I'm
You're
not
not
saying that.
nearly as messy as my friend and colleague that I want to bring on. And you know what? I'm gonna talk about him a little bit because there have been times where when we were in the same workspace, I would have to go get a part. In IT, we do work with a lot of hardware, and I would have to go get a part from his desk, and I would have to rummage through literal trash, literal like wrappers and stuff, to find what I'm looking for. Or there's just so many knickknacks to keep him like for the fidgeting. There's just so much going on that I get overwhelmed from looking at the space, and I'm like, you know what? It's not that important, and it might be. It might be, and I'll go somewhere else to deal with it or figure it out. But it's a problem to work with that type of situation. And while his personality is great, he does get work done. It takes a little longer to get that work done,
Mhm.
because of that tandem effect I mentioned to you about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's 100%. I definitely agree with you there. I think we talked about some great topics. I mean, going over the work from home side of things, going over a little bit of the decor, how decorations, the right and wrong way to manage people from home, taking care of making sure that your area is cleaned up and tidy. So, a lot of great stuff today. We're going to go ahead and cut it here. If you stuck with me this long, I truly appreciate it. If you like the content, please rate the show. And if you're feeling a little crazy, maybe share it with someone.